This is the Commercial Landscapers podcast hosted by Dave Anderson and Robert Clinkenbeard. This show will absolutely transform your leadership by developing all aspects of your life in business, family, personal and health. Only by fine-tuning yourself will you truly operate as a highly functioning leader. Okay, hi everyone. It's Robert Clinkenbeard with the Landscapers podcast. I am really delighted to have Spencer Sheinin on our show today. So Spencer, welcome for joining me today. Give me a little bit background, who you are, give me your elevator pitch.
Cool, yeah, thanks so much for having me. This is great. My background's a little bit funny in that early on I went into accounting. I left school and did my CPA and literally hated every day of the CPA journey. Like legitimately, I actually felt sick when I was working sometimes. And so but quitting, I wasn't going to quit. So I just kept going with it and fought through, got my degree because I figured it wasn't a bad degree to have. Went into investment banking. So worked for one of the big banks. I'm from Vancouver, BC. So I was one of the big Canadian banks and, was equally nauseated going to work. And, I at the time, literally I was working we started about 6 a.m., often worked till about 2 a.m. This was doing mergers and acquisitions of large publicly traded companies, financings for large publicly traded companies. And I was at the bottom of the rung. So you could imagine what life is like for an analyst in that business. And so again, I kind of knew it wasn't for me and didn't realize at the time, but that was really a lot of foundation setting of the kind of the understanding how numbers work and understanding the stories and that kind of thing. So I left that and through a long, arduous story, ended up buying a business with my then business partner where it was actually a manufacturing business. It's really weird going from where I was. And we walked in and we saw lip balm coming off the end of the manufacturing line. And we're like, wow, this is actually a real business. We can actually, and this was during the tech boom, right? So the tech was just going crazy at the time. And we're like, I don't understand, like, why are these businesses selling for what they're selling? But this, as long as we work hard and do better than the competitor, we'll do well. So I actually had that business for 15 years. And one of our products was hand sanitizer. So you could imagine if I was still in that business,
I know,
it would be great.
You've been running bankroll right there.
Yeah, I don't regret. I wasn't happy in that business, so I don't regret not being in it now. But it would be interesting times. And then along the way during that business, we grew that. We had, I don't know, maybe 15 employees when we started. We grew it to about 60. And my business partner had another business, which was a construction business, which was high-end custom homes in Vancouver. So he and his partner retired, and he invited me into that business with the idea that I'd be the guy putting in the systems and process to help extract him out of the day-to-day of the business.
Right.
Turns out he was the unique ability of that entire business. So you can't process out magic.
Yep, I get you.
And very quickly, the third thing, the other business, actually, my dad was involved in a cold storage business. Him and a partner had 3 facilities in Washington State. And when his partner retired, I came in as a partner on that business as well. So I then also got involved with a family business, which is a whole bunch of different dynamics on top of it. And, there I was kind of in my mid-30s with these 3 businesses. We had about 300 employees combined. And I'm wondering, how did I get here? Like, how did this happen? And, over the course of the next sort of 5-8 years, whatever the timing was, we hit 2008. We had a couple of challenges with hiring general managers. We were trying to extract ourselves with the day-to-days and had a lot of sleepless nights and ultimately exited all the businesses, sold the cold storage to a private equity that was rolling up the industry. My partner and I separated our businesses very amicably. We're still friends today. He took the construction, I took the manufacturing, and woke up one day realizing I didn't love my business. In fact, I hated it again. I'd been there, at the time, 13, 14 years, and just was pretty miserable, to be honest, and thought my life isn't worth being miserable. Ultimately sold that to a large competitor on the east side of Canada. They rolled our business into theirs, and I found myself about, in my
Nice.
late 30s, early 40s, saying, what am I going to do with my life?
Okay.
And so to get to what I'm doing now, I was actually at an Entrepreneurs Organization event, and there was a financial speaker, a great speaker, brilliant, Alan Miltz. I'm sure you've either heard him or seen him.
Yep.
Yeah. And he's brilliant. And I remember there was a point where he gave one of his formulas and I corrected him, and everybody laughed because he's brilliant. Don't get me wrong. He is brilliant, but he talks fast. It's complicated. It's high level stuff. And like, I was fully concentrated. And so there was a guy at my table and he goes, hey, can you put this in my business? And literally a light bulb just went off. It's like, wow, the finance is so critical and entrepreneurs really struggle with it. So I speak both languages. So I am the bridge that can pull those two together. So I ended up starting my current business, Shift Financial Insights, where we make accounting not suck for entrepreneurs.
And I can totally relate. Finance is definitely not my strength. And I remember listening to Alan during one of the presentations, and I literally had to record his session so I could then go back and play it in slow motion so I could actually understand it. So the fact that you were able to follow it, repeat. The fact that you could follow it but then correct him, I think is a great story. Yeah. So, when you talk about, you're having all these different businesses.
Sorry to interrupt. Just to clarify, I think Alan's stuff is really brilliant. I think, particularly for businesses that are quite sophisticated in advance and have the foundation set really solid, his stuff is amazing. My stuff is more for the people that are struggling to get things even right, don't know what to ask, don't know where to start. Right. So nothing I'm saying is a dig at Alan. His stuff is great.
No problem. So, you had multiple businesses. You went into 2008. Obviously, we all know what happened then. We're now in August of 2020, and there's a lot of challenges ahead of us. And, I get almost on a daily basis, I'm saying, well, what's going to happen in the future? What do I do? What direction do I go? So, with your experience with business, going through downturns before, what do you see going on?
Yeah, great question. It's I choose the word interesting times because I do think there's a real balance between crisis and opportunity, kind of the classic thing here. I personally believe this is not a V-shaped issue. This is going to be around for a while. The reason I think that is because enough businesses have lost a year's worth of revenue. We have clients who are, say, in the event business, and it's like, well, we can't put on events for a year. Well, that impacts them, that impacts their staff, that impacts their suppliers, et cetera, et cetera. The NBA, the NHL, football, like all of these things without fans in the stands, that means they don't need all the staff. So like, I think there's the trickle down effect is really huge here. And I think about, you look at the businesses that, there's not a lot of businesses that are just sort of carrying on. There's businesses that are really excelling right now, and there's businesses that are really struggling right now. And I think it's really critical to have a hard, honest look. Is my business something that has long-term sustainable opportunity? Do I just need to weather the storm, or do I really need to think about changing? For me, accounting, we're always going to need accounting until it's fully automated. That's a different conversation. Right. At the same time, I have a lot of clients whose doors have been closed for 6 months, and it's like, okay, well, that impacts my business, so I'm not totally immune either. I think it's really this is a massive paradigm shifting thing that will take some time to work through, and we'll get out of it, and it'll look different in the future. Industries will look different in the future, and so I think it's really just an honest, hard look. Is what I'm doing right now actually viable long term?
Right. That's a good point. One of the things that we talked about earlier before we started recording, Greg Crabtree, good friend of both of ours, he just talked about Alan. One of the messages that I keep hearing ringing back, cash is king, or Greg talking about having 3 or 4 months of expenses in the bank. Obviously cash is hugely important right now. And even on a call this morning, I talked to some business owners that wish they had more cash, or wish they had listened to speakers talking about conserving that cash. What do you see? I mean, what do you see out there?
Yeah. I mean, I know Greg, I wouldn't go so far as to say he's a good friend. I enjoy him. I just don't, I've met him several times, just to clarify. to me, having a few months of cash in the bank is a result. It's a goal and a result, but it's a result of actually having things in place. So, sure, have 3 months in the bank, cool. And it's getting the information, like, to me, it's as much about kind of the foundation to allow that to happen. And from the finance perspective, like really, really understanding information in a way that is just simple, intuitive, and easy to understand that you can do quickly. I'm not a big fan of, financial statements for entrepreneurs. That's a technical language that I went to school for years to learn how to write, interpret, read, create, and entrepreneurs didn't. So, to try and build 3 months of cash, well, I have to understand what's actually going on in a way that an entrepreneur brain works. And that's sort of, again, where I think when I think about Alan's stuff, I think about Greg's stuff, both great stuff. I think Greg's stuff is also a little bit for businesses that might be more advanced than the type of companies we work with who already have a foundation, the financials make sense, they understand it and can now put the strategies to build 3 months. Whereas for me, it's like, okay, I don't even know what to ask. I don't even know what to start. I don't know what these statements mean. And my approach is financial statements aren't for the entrepreneur. They're for nerds like me who are accountants. Financial statements should be delivered in a way, not in financial statement form, but in just a simple, intuitive, easy to understand way. Again, entrepreneur looks at it in 5 minutes. They actually understand all of the critical financial things about their business so they can start making the decisions to build up to that 3 or 6 month reserve of cash.
Okay, that's cool.
Mm-hmm. And just to tag on to that, sorry to interrupt, the kind of the key element for that is really data visualization. A picture's worth 1,000 words. If you can get your accounting department to deliver information in picture format, the right pictures in the right format, all of a sudden it's like, oh, this is game changing. I can take any entrepreneur that understands nothing about finances, give me 15 minutes with them, and they will understand exactly their financial position and the key issues facing their business every time.
No, I can relate to that. When I start seeing some balance sheets or P&Ls in front of me, my brain just switches off. But I'm assuming you cover this in your book. You've came up with a book, Entrepreneur Numbers. What are maybe the two key things that come out of that, especially relating to business owners and what they're going through right now?
Yeah, so it's Entrepreneur Numbers, the surprisingly simple path to financial clarity. And it's kind of what I just talked about, where it's designed to empower entrepreneurs to confidently direct their accounting team to get the information they need in a format that works for entrepreneurs. So there's examples, there's layouts, there's that type of thing. So it starts off with, why do we end up in crisis in the first place? There's a few reasons why entrepreneurs end up stuck, frustrated, embarrassed, not having the right people in place, not knowing what to ask, those types of things. And then here's the plan of attack. And here's how here's an example of a reporting package that you should be asking for. And now you have a template. And then here are the steps to get there. And it's not you entrepreneur, go do these things. It's you entrepreneur, hold your team accountable to bring you these things. And if you're not getting them, either you need to elevate them or you need to move on.
Right. And again, I can relate to that because I was pretty weak in the numbers. And one of the challenges I had was, first of all, knowing what to ask my controller.
Totally.
And then also, deadlines, forgetting when the book should be closed. And then the same step is I felt as though with the different CPA firms I worked with in the past, I almost felt as though I was chasing them on. They weren't coming up with the reports I was looking for. They weren't being proactive. It came down to the wire in terms of tax time. And it was just a pretty frustrating relationships. So I can definitely
I think accountants, and I say this a bit begrudgingly out loud on a podcast, but accountants have done a disservice to entrepreneurs. But if you flip it around and be the accountant, your expertise is doing taxes in year ends. You're not a business strategist. You're not a business analyst. You might see a lot of financials. And so all of a sudden it's, crunch time, I'm in busy season. I've just got to crank out all these returns. Like that's the dilemma that they're facing. But something that you've mentioned a couple of times, I just want to highlight where you've resonated because it's like, I was not strong in this. I'll tell you, the other thing that I find helps entrepreneurs recognize is that most entrepreneurs are in the shoes that you were saying, I don't know what to ask, or I'm feeling uncomfortable, or how do I hold my controller accountable? And, you know, the majority of clients we take on, the majority of entrepreneurs I speak to, don't have a budget in place. Their statements aren't even set up in a way that makes sense, not only to read, but also to extract data, to make meaningful analysis out of it, because they don't know how, you know, the chart of accounts, that's not set up. You know, the blueprints of the financials aren't set up right. And a lot of that often happens for smaller businesses, because you've got a bookkeeper doing everything. And, you know, you think about building a house, you've got a general contractor, you've got sub-trades, you've got laborers, and they all have different skill sets. Well, the bookkeeper is the laborer of the accounting world. The controller are the sub-trades, the CFO is the general contractor. And so if your entire business is running on a bookkeeper, that's like hiring a laborer to build you an entire house. You wouldn't do that. And so, and entrepreneurs, we don't know what to ask. We don't know where to go. So we just end up in this cycle. And that's why the experience you had, then you had a controller. So you were already had one level more sophisticated accounting going on. But in the early days, you probably didn't. No. And so this is where this cycle just happens, and they're stuck and frustrated, embarrassed, don't know what to do, don't know what to ask.
Right. Switching subjects on you slightly. So we've both done endurance races. You've done some Ironman, you've done ultras, you've done marathons. So, you know, I can obviously relate to that. Now, I came out with a book last year, and, you know, one of the things I talked about was, you know, just transferring that mindset from, you know, the endurance races into business. And I think between us, we've talked about plans, roadmaps, blueprints. And, you know, I can just think back about, you know, we don't just go into a race, you know, we have to plan for that. We have a training plan, we have, you know, a roadmap in there. So, you know, talk to me about how, you know, you use that mindset or that plan in both your business and personal life.
Yeah, I love that question. It's such an interesting overlay, how there's similarities. And I'll tell you about how I'm actually looking at things a bit different these days. And, you know, to clarify, like I've done, you know, 100-mile trail marathon was my longest race. And, you know, for me, that's as much about, of course, there's a preparation, there's a roadmap, but while you're in it, also taking care. You know, you have to stop at aid stations and, you know, get more fuel and water. You have to make, you know, apply body glide or whatever anti-chafe you're going to use. Otherwise, you could literally get knocked out of the race if you chafe too badly. Like, I've been near bleeding from chafing, you know, as I'm sure you have.
Oh, yeah.
And so, you know, what are all of the things, what are the kind of the business equivalents of food and water? What are the business equivalents of anti-chafe? What are the business equivalents of actually, you know, taking a walk break if you need to, especially ultra trail running? It's like, walk the ups, you know, like don't burn yourself out. And so all of those kind of checkpoints, and I do a lot of speaking as well. And I use body glide as an example, like that could knock you out. And if you don't have the right information, that could knock you out of the entrepreneurial game. Where I've actually sort of shifted to in the last few years, and I am 46 now, and I don't know if that's playing into it. I'm finding my work style being more like a sprint race than an ultra marathon. Okay. I find I'm actually really enjoying shorter bursts of high intensity workload with more shorter breaks, rather than I would sit down before. You know, I imagine you get up early, just kind of nature of people who do endurance sport. I don't set an alarm. I'm usually up between 5:30 and 6. My morning routine has changed in the last couple of years, but let's say I'm sitting down to work at 8, like I wouldn't get up for hours and hours and hours. And now I'll do, you know, even a half hour or, you know, 60-minute burst, and then I'll walk around the block, and then I'll do another burst, and I'll be really intentional about, this is what I want to get done in this time block. And I'm finding that's allowing me more productivity later. I don't have the slow burn of the ultra marathon, where I'm dragging my butt over the finish line, and I'm blasting more. And so it's just interesting how kind of the sport analogy has changed for me, because even my workouts have evolved to more sprint style. If you're familiar with Zwift bike trainer, you know, doing Zwift on bikes, I've been on Zwift, and I'm loving the 10, 15, 20 kilometer races more than the 70, 100 kilometer races.
And is that you feel a little fitter from that, from doing the shorter?
I feel more energetic and less worn down.
Right.
And that's, again, the corollary between sport and business. I feel less worn down when I do short blasts of intense work and then take long, meaningful breaks. As long as I don't get sucked into a Netflix vortex, that's not really restorative. As long as I'm doing things that are regenerative. Yeah, that's the...
Okay. We're running out of time here. One quick question. I mean, is that then applying for you in your business? I mean, if you're feeling less worn down, I mean, surely you're feeling then more energetic, you're being more productive in your work. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's more, I've done a lot of work on myself and, sleep habits and, morning routines and stuff that, there's a million podcasters out there, podcasts and experts about sleep and diet, nutrition. Like, I've taken kind of my whole health really seriously. And that is actually one of the reasons I've stepped out of endurance sport into more high intensity interval stuff, because just the benefits physically and energetically, you go out for a 4, 5, 6 hour ride, I'm dragging the rest of the day, no matter what. And now, like, I get off my bike after a half-hour super sprint and I'm actually pumped up. I'll still take a nap, but I'm pretty pumped up. So and that's done what I've done with business too, short, intense, and then break. I'm really big on breaks these days.
Yeah, no, I'm all about that. Yeah, I'm now 52 and I definitely need my break every so often.
Well, you're doing well for 52, I'll tell you that.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Spencer, really enjoyed talking to you today. How people wanted to just talk to you more about your book, what your services, how did they get in touch with you?
Two things. One, entreprenumbers.com. Obviously the book's there, but there's also a bunch of free downloads, resources. You can kind of get a sense of what's going on there. And it just as a gift to you and your listeners, the first 5 people that email me, Spencer at shiftfinancial.co, not .com, entreprenumbers.com, shiftfinancial.co, pardon the confusion. If you're on QuickBooks Online or Xero, I will actually connect you to our API that we've built, and I will present to you your financial information in the way that I was explaining before, is simple, intuitive, easy. So I'll extract the data and I'll sit down and do a one-on-one. So email Spencer at shiftfinancial.co, reference this podcast. Robert, I'll let you know as people reach out. And that's just my gift to you and your listeners. First 5. Just to put some limit on not getting overwhelmed.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that. I really appreciate it. Really enjoyed talking to you. I want to circle back with you, and thanks for your time today, Spencer.
Thanks, Robert. Really enjoyed it. Thanks so much.
This was the Commercial Landscaper podcast, hosted by Dave Anderson, author of Leader is Not a Title, and Robert Clinkenbeard, author of The Ironman Mindset for Entrepreneurs. You can find more details about the show and the hosts at the radixgroupllc.com or thecommerciallandscaper.com.